Yeah, sure. We are being recorded. That's good to know also. Hi, everybody. Also to the familiar faces, but also especially to the new faces. My name is Thomas Smits, and I'm an assistant professor of digital history at the University of Antwerp. And I have the honor of welcoming you to this February event of RSVP's Digital Events Committee. And I hope you know that RSVP stands for the Research Society for Victorian Periodicals. So I guess so, because you are here, of course. But I also extend this welcome on behalf of my other committee members. So Priti Joshi, our chair, Katie Birch, Surav Chatterjee, Mary Grant, Ali Hattarji, Andrew Hobbs, and Gary Newman. Just to give you a short overview of today's event, we will first listen to the talk by our guest. We are very happy that he's here, John Walsh. We'll talk about On the Dusty Shelves of Libraries, Exploring the 19th Century with the HathiTrust Digital Library. And his talk will last for about 30 to 40 minutes. Then we have ample time for discussion, so around 20 to 30 minutes. Just some practicalities. Please check that your microphone is muted, especially for John's talk, of course. And you are very welcome to leave your camera on or off during the talk. But if you want to ask a question, you can either do so by turning on your mic and camera and raising your hand so that I can see you, or you can, of course, raise a digital hand, or you can post your question in the chat so that I can read it out loud to everybody. Without further ado, let me just give you a very short some info on John. So we're very happy that John Walsh has agreed to tell us something more about the possibility of using the HathiTrust Digital Library to explore the 19th century. So John is the director of the HathiTrust Research Center and also an associate professor of information and library science at Indiana University. And his research applies computational methods to the study of literary and also historical documents. So I've studied a little bit of his work, and he has added quite a wide range of digital scholarly editions. And he's also the founding technical editor of DHQ, or Digital Humanities Quarterly, which I think is probably maybe at least one of the most important digital humanities journals. So he has a very wide range of research interests, but I was told that Charles Swinburne ranks especially high among them. So that is very good company to have in our midst. So last December, I listened to a very fascinating paper by John and Glenn Worthy during the Computational Humanities Research Conference in Paris. And I hope that we will hear something about that also today, but also in general more about the HathiTrust Digital Library. So John, thanks again, and the digital floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'll just share my screen here. It's great to be here and great to be welcomed by your community. As was mentioned, I'm in a School of Information Library Science, or a Department of Information and Library Science, alongside other departments of computer science and engineering and informatics. But my background and training is in literary studies, so it's great to be among other humanities scholars today. So I'll jump right in here. I'm going to talk generally about the HathiTrust Digital Library and our research center, and then a couple examples of some 19th century specific work that I've done. So the mission of the research center, we're kind of a subsidiary of the larger HathiTrust Digital Library, and our mission is to enable and support computational analysis of the HathiTrust corpus. And we do this by developing and implementing secure computational environments, tools for text data mining, and non-consumptive research, and I'll unpack that phrase in a bit. Data sets that are derived from the HathiTrust corpus, and then we have various outreach and education programs, workshops, and support programs to help people use our resources. Non-consumptive research is a legal term that comes out of the court cases among publishers and Google and the libraries that were providing books for the Google Books project and so on. And it was ruled in the US that this non-consumptive research was allowed under our laws. And that's research in which computational analysis is performed on a text, but not in which the researcher reads or displays substantial portions of the text to understand the expressive content presented within it. So that means with the copyrighted content that's still protected, you can run programs and algorithms across those texts and get your data results and interpret those, but you're not supposed to open up the files and read them as you would a book. So that non-consumptive use where you're not consuming the text by traditional reading that we're all used to is allowed and does not violate copyright. So now a little profile of the digital library. So there are now over 18 million volumes in the HathiTrust digital library. Over half of it is English, and German, French, and Spanish represent about almost 25% of the remainder. And then the other 25% is over 450 other languages. Some of the tools we provide a small number of web-based text analysis algorithms, such as topic modeling, word frequency analysis, and named entity recognition. So here is a image of the topic modeling tool created on Thomas Hardy's novels and short stories. And topic modeling is a technique where you process text files and the algorithm generates clusters of words that occur frequently together. And they're not really topics, they're kind of words that appear in a discourse, and then it's up to the researcher to interpret those words and assign a label or a topic to that discourse. And it's a common technique in digital humanities work. So in this topic, it's very small, but the first 10 words of many that appear in that topic are Jude, Sue, Arabella, Obscure, Christminster, Phillotson. So that's obviously a topic related to Hardy's Jude the Obscure. Here's word frequency analysis tool from Hardy. And we see on the right word cloud showing the 200 most frequent words in Hardy's novels and short stories. And then on the left is the spreadsheet that you can also download from our web tool. So you run the tool across a collection. In this case, I made a collection of Hardy's novels and short stories, and it generates this graphic that you can use in a class or presentation like this. But you also get a spreadsheet file that you can explore in more detail of not just the top 200 words, but every word in the corpus. So you can also see the least frequent words in the corpus. And then there's a named entity recognition tool. So entities are nouns, particularly proper nouns, and you can see just a fragment of the spreadsheet one gets out of this tool. Entities identified include little father time, Christian, Jewish, so sort of proper adjectives, and so on. It also has all the pronouns, which I pulled out a lot of those for this slide so we could see some of the proper nouns, but you would get all the pronouns as well, which could be used for sort of gender analysis, comparing, male and female pronouns. And then this gets a little, those previous tools are meant for novice users, and you can create a collection in the HathiTrust digital library go to our Research Center page, which is linked off of these slides, and run those tools against your collection. I did Hardy. You could do a collection of, you know, Dickens novels or whatever you're interested in. This next topic gets a little more into the technical weeds, and I'll do my best not to lose you. So we create many data sets from the full text corpus of the HathiTrust Digital Library. That's the foundational data, the OCR, optical character recognition, machine recognized language that's on all the page images that they've digitized. But then we process that to create additional data sets, and one of those is the extracted features data set. And it includes volume and page level metadata for a snapshot of the 18 million volumes in the digital library. So the last time we ran it and created the extracted features data set, there were over 17 million volumes, but it's not quite up to date with the daily updating of the HathiTrust Digital Library. And it includes volume metadata, you know, title, author, publication date, publication place, and so on, and page level metadata. And that page level metadata includes every word on the page and how many times it occurs, but it's not in the order that it is on the original page. And that gets back to the non-consumptive issue. It's less relevant for this 19th century material because there are ways to access the full text, and, you know, most of them are out of copyright. But for material that's in copyright, this gives everybody access to every word on every page of 17 million volumes out of copyright and in copyright. And you can do a lot of computational work and processing on that, but you can't read the text. And therefore you're not violating copyright. So here's a page, a sonnet from Swinburne, and we see some of the words in here: seabird, wind weary, high domed, between. And this is what the extracted features looks like for that page. And eventually we get down to the token count, and there's the word wind weary. And there's also part of speech information, and it occurs once in the poem. Seabird occurs once. And if this was a page of a novel, you'd have more words and more frequency of the different words and so on. But there I have access to every word in the poem, but I can't reconstruct the poem if I don't, you know, computationally anyway. So that's a very powerful tool, especially for in copyright content, but it also enables other things. And this will transition me into our Torchlight project. And some of you may be familiar with Voyant. It's a common digital humanities tool, and it allows you to upload texts or point to a link on the web, and you get various visualizations and analytics about those texts. So this screenshot's doing Jane Austen's novels, and we see a word cloud like we saw from our tool and some summary information and so on. And our Torchlight project is using that extracted features data set I just showed to build something like Voyant for HathiTrust Digital Library. So this is a screenshot of our Torchlight dashboard, and we currently have 2 of these widgets, and we'll be adding more. This widget is taking a work set. In this case, it's a work set of Native American authored works that we built with a team of researchers interested in that topic. And this is combined, it's pulling the author information from our extracted features data and then going to Wikidata to get the birthplace of those authors and mapping the birthplace of the authors on a map. And you can drill down into this visualization and get the data. So we have the birthplace, year of birth, and the coordinates for the birthplace for all these authors, and you can download that and download the graphic that's created and so on. This other work sets the dashboard is meant to be a user-friendly front end similar to the Voyant tool that inspired it. And behind it, we also have an API, which is something for developers and digital humanities scholars to use to access the data more directly and build their own tools with it. So the previous way to access the extracted features data was a kind of esoteric Unix tool, rsync, where you would kind of download the whole thing or portions of it to your desktop. And there wasn't easy access to get individual volumes or pages. And this API will allow kind of modern web access, and people will build web tools like the things I just showed. So this is an example of this link will grab the volume metadata for this volume, and if it's working, and it may not be today, I'll revisit that in a bit. You can try these links out on your own later. Again, the project's in development, so there may be people working on it today and it's not up. And then this link would give you just publication dates. I'll try this one, see if this works for me. Yeah, so this one worked. The volume is just a larger chunk of data, so it's taking longer. So this is a work set, and I can't remember what volumes are in there, but in this command that I'm giving through the URL, I'm just grabbing publication dates, and that could be used in any number of web tools, or just to download the data to work with on your own. Now here I'm going to promote, in May, we're having a hackathon related to this project to work with the API I just showed and to build more widgets for our dashboard. And it's going to be May 21st to 23rd at University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. And there are links here to the website. And we also have a application process. We have some, this project's funded by the National Endowment for the Humanities. And we have some funding in the grant to provide travel funding to a limited number of participants. And so you can apply for that. We're looking both for programmers and developers, but also content experts who just have good ideas of things they'd like to see and tools they'd like to create, and provide feedback on tools that the developers are creating. So we're looking for a diverse group of participants for this event, if that is of interest to anybody. Now I'm going to move on to one of the 19th century specific projects. This is a data set about Swinburne, Victorian poet Algernon Charles Swinburne's library, and that data set's available on GitHub. And I'm going to skip this part of the quote and read the second part where I got the title for my talk today. The half-brained creature to whom books are other than living things may see with the eyes of a bat and draw with the fingers of a mole his dullard's distinction between books and life. Those who live the fuller life of a higher animal than he know that books are to poets as much part of that life as pictures are to painters, or as music is to musicians. Dead matter though they may be to the spiritually stillborn children of dirt and dullness, who find it possible and natural to live while dead in heart and brain. Marlowe and Shakespeare, Aeschylus and Sappho, to do not for us live only on the dusty shelves of library. So that's typical Swinburnian flamboyance. But, you know, he's getting across the importance of books to poets and others, and asserting that they're living things. And I think some, you know, what he may not have anticipated is the many lives and digital lives they now take on in systems like the HathiTrust Digital Library and the work we do with the HathiTrust Research Center. So we built a data set based on, we call it Swinburne's Library and Presumed Reading. So the foundation of it is a sales catalog, Sotheby's sales catalog, where they sold the contents of Swinburne's library. And that's his library. His presumed reading we get from things he cited in his poetry. So titles that cite other works, epigraphs where he's quoting and citing other writers, or notes, you know, authorial notes that he himself provides to his own work that reference other people's writing. And we presume that he read those things that he's citing. And then we haven't yet added, but we plan to add things he cites in his letters. So we'll use the indexes of the editions of Swinburne's letters and include those works if they aren't already represented in his library. This is a screen, you know, a facsimile page of first page of the sales catalog, and his library was sold in 1916. Some of the authors are listed there: Baudelaire, Blake, Hugo, Rossetti, and Shelley. Also, a lot of things you would expect to find in Swinburne's library: Elizabethan poetry and drama, Kelmscott Press editions from his friend William Morris, a lot of French literature. These are what the individual entries look like in the sales catalog. And that was the foundation for the data set. And then we went through, you know, his poetry. And here's an epigraph from Erechtheus that cites Pindar and Aeschylus. A birthday ode to Victor Hugo, so an implied dedication to Hugo. And then this poem is basically a bibliography in verse, and Swinburne's notes to the poem alert the reader to which of Hugo's works Swinburne's writing about in different lines of the poem. So if things from these notes weren't in the library, we would add them to our data set. And then these are, you know, the two modern editions of Swinburne's letters, and that we will use to add things that he's cited and referenced in his letters to our data set. We took that information from the sales catalog and the notes and epigraphs and so on, and created a TEI XML encoded bibliography. And for each entry in the bibliography, we include a link to the full text. So the bibliography is a useful research tool in and of itself, but it also includes links to the items in the HathiTrust Digital Library and other places. So this link goes to the Kelmscott Press edition that's referenced in this item, and here we see it in the HathiTrust Digital Library. More of the code there. This one, we use the HathiTrust Digital Library as our default source. And then if we couldn't find the item in there, we'd go to other sources, including the Internet Archive, the Text Creation Partnership, which are TEI encoded texts, Google Books, or EBO and Echo. So we analyzed the metadata from our TEI encoded bibliography. There are about 1,600 items in 2,500 volumes. Many of the items are multi-volume works, so we have more volumes than items. The sales catalog had size information, so we include a breakdown of that in our analysis. Publication dates is interesting. Of course, you know, it's the 19th century is the most represented, but we have books going back to the 15th century. These are the most represented authors in our bibliography. And, you know, if nothing surprising here, if you know Swinburne, Shelley, Shakespeare, Hunt, Landor, which you probably wouldn't find other people's top 5 authors, but there it is in Swinburne, Morris, Browning, you know, Hugo, a French author, you know, in the top 10 or so there. So the most represented authors represent, you know, match what we know about Swinburne. So of the authors with 5 or more items, there are 56, 4 of which are women. 538 volumes are of these most represented authors, dominated by 19th century authors and dominated by poets. So these are those top authors. And it's showing we picked the midpoint between their birth and death to, you know, represent the kind of arbitrary center of their career, and map those out on a timeline. So we see, you know, the 19th century is the most dominant period. And then this cluster of people, you know, around 1600, which matches Swinburne's work and interest in Elizabethan and Jacobean poetry and drama. Another visualization of those the authors' dates. These are the genres most represented among those top authors, so mostly poetry, and then fiction, drama, and other. And the languages. And again, that matches. French was definitely the most influential literature outside of English for Swinburne. And then we did some word frequency analysis, parallel word frequency analysis of all the works in the library, and then all the works, all of his poetry. And we've highlighted here, you know, matching words in those most frequent words in each corpus. We did some topic modeling to look at the most frequent topics represented in these corpora. So these are topics among those authors with 5 or more works. And we put these labels on the topics, like poetic language, political history, nature, ancient classical Greece and Rome, and so on. I'm just don't want to take too much time on these. So I'm going to wrap up with another data set that in the process of creating this semester with a undergraduate student, Lily Stella here. And it's a data set of anthologized 19th century poets. So we went through the tables of contents from Norton Anthology, Broadview Anthology, and Longman, and took all the poets from those. And then we went to HathiTrust Digital Library and pulled, we matched them with people in the ProQuest English Poetry Collection, and we used those editions that they're using in ProQuest for like collected works, and found those same editions in HathiTrust Digital Library and added all those volumes to our data set. So we have 165 volumes by 78 poets from these 3 anthologies. And you can, if you have access to these slides, which you will online through a link we're providing, you can see, scroll through and see the poets who are in this work set. And then you can use this tool or the tools I've shown today to do similar things with this work set. So here's a word frequency analysis of all those anthologized poets, all their works concatenated together and analyzed. And as we saw before, you can download the CSV file for all that and so on. And this is, I want to acknowledge the students and colleagues who've worked on the projects I've shown today and other presentations that I've put together for this one today. So thank you to them, and thank you to all of you. And I'll stop there and look forward to your questions.
Thanks. Thank you very much, John. That was great. Maybe we can just start. I have some questions, but maybe we can just see who has a question in the audience. So maybe you can stop sharing your screen, John, for a moment, so that I can see if somebody is raising
Sure.
their hand. Yeah. Let me just check. If anybody wants to jump in, please do so. Maybe I can start then. So John, thank you very much. So I think when hearing your talk, I was sort of reminded of one of the sort of the early goals of the Research Society for Victorian Periodicals, namely to sort of get an overview of this enormous volume of the Victorian press, right? So we know that from for example, from the Waterloo Directory, that we have thousands and thousands of titles of newspapers, of periodicals, which have been published in the Victorian times or in the 19th century. And I was wondering, would something like an extracted feature data set, would that bring us closer to a sort of a more generalized overview of this body of work, which we can call the Victorian press?
Well, for that example, I mean, you would have the extracted feature if the content's in the HathiTrust Digital Library, like if they have multiple volumes of the Pall Mall Gazette or something, you could get the extracted features for those volumes. But you can also, and scores of other periodicals that they may have. But depending on your relationship with the HathiTrust libraries a member organization, and depending on your relationship with them, if your university is a member and so on, you can also get access to the full text for all of those volumes, which gives you both. There may be things you can do with the extracted features that you can't do with the full text, but you can have access to both. You may have access to the public domain content, even if you're not a member of HathiTrust Digital Library. Our extracted features data is available to everybody, regardless of affiliation with HathiTrust or not. So that, opens it up to a wider, more international audience. There are some international institutions that are members of HathiTrust, but not that many.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Yeah, we can go on about, but are there any other questions in the meantime? I just see a couple of people with their cameras on, so I'm not quite sure if that's everybody. Yeah. Pretty. Yeah.
Sorry, I just have to say that my internet is very unstable, so if I break up, apologies. Thank you for that, and John, and my question is about periodicals as well, like Tomas's question. I find so partly whenever I'm using HathiTrust to look for, and I don't use it obviously for newspapers, but we'll use it for journals. It's not a very user-friendly interface, right? And I don't know if I'm sort of saying this right. I mean, it's a user experience question, but it doesn't seem to do very well with the same title over that has periodicity, volume 12 for, the year 1849 or 1869. And so this is really a user experience question, not a metadata kind of question. Which is there something about the periodicity of periodicals, newspapers and periodicals, that HathiTrust, that makes things a little harder for HathiTrust? I mean, or maybe I'm just doing it wrong.
Well, that's a great question, and it is both a user experience and a metadata question, because one of the difficulties faced by the HathiTrust Digital Library is they have these 18 million volumes contributed by dozens or hundreds of different libraries, and they don't all do their metadata the same. And so that's part of why, and I think it's a goal to kind of make that more uniform in that, but it's not something they've been able to tackle yet with 18 million volumes. So you have these inconsistent metadata records coming from many different institutions, which I think is part of the cause behind the user experience problems you're describing.
Thanks. So we have a question in the chat, which is also very much close to my heart. So thank you very much for that, Beatrice Laurent. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. I pronounced it in the French way. I don't know if that's all right. So she asked, with the tools you have presented, is it possible to collect information about illustrations as well?
We do not have that information now. Of course, the digital library has, the OCR text, which means it's imperfect. The text is not transcribed by humans. It's read by a computer from the page images. They have that text and they have the page images for everything, of course. The research center, we only have a copy of the text. We don't have all the page images. We have supported individual research projects with individual researchers that are working with page images, so we can get access to the images on a kind of as needed basis. But most of our work has been focused on the text. We recognize the interest and we have the interest ourselves in doing more work with page images and illustrations and other things, maps and tables and other types of things you find in all these wonderful page images, but it's not something we've done a lot with.
Right, thanks. Yeah, just some shameless self-promotion, Beatrice, but with the generous support of RSVP, I'm currently working on a project with Paul Fife and Ben Lee and Julia Thomas that tries to provide the first open access collection of images from the Illustrated London News. We're also trying to make these tools available for the French collections, for example, the periodicals that are available through Gallica. So if you want to know more about it or have some ideas, please contact us there. So sorry for that plug. Are there any other questions? Georgina Gale. Yeah, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi. So oh Christ, my thing's not working. There we go. Hi. So sorry, I had to answer the door, but I think you've answered this question somewhat with Beatrice's, and I caught the end of your answer with regards to illustrations. I also wondered that because there's a really interesting connection between illustration and text. Obviously, sorry, I've lost my thread. I was wondering if you're also going to incorporate things like adverts and other things that might not be characterized, that some people don't consider text, but so they don't place as much importance on them, but actually they often, reflect target audiences. They usually reflect target audiences, but there's often more thought put into them perhaps than you might give credit for. Is that something you're going to consider text, or does that fall
Well,
into
it would
images, or?
It would be in the OCR text. If the adverts are in the page images, they would be recognized along with title pages and tables of contents and all other kind of paratextual elements you might find there. Identifying those, is something that could be done through a variety of techniques, with kind of machine learning and teaching the computer, this is what, here's thousands of examples of ads. Now go find tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands based on what you know about these examples we've provided you. We've worked with researchers to do projects on the page images, for example, to identify poetry in newspapers and journals. It's not, the full publication is not poetry, but there are, select portions, and that type of thing could be applied to identifying ads as well. So that's something I'm particularly interested in. I have a whole separate project on comic book paratexts, which include a lot of advertisements and fan mail and other things. But most of our work at the Research Center is driven not by our own research, but by supporting people who come to us. So the extent we're interested in it is the extent to which you're interested in it and come to us for help. And I should mention, we periodically, once a year or so, have this program, the Advanced Collaborative Support Program, and that's on our website. And we do a call and people apply. And then if their project's selected, there's typically not funding, but there's an extended period of more in-depth, intensive support from our team for your project. And we welcome, applications from people in this audience to that program.
Thanks. I'm trying to see in the chat and also with people raising their hands if there are any other questions. Maybe I can ask a question, John, that I get asked often. Like I'm originally an historian, a very traditionally trained historian, and my colleagues often ask me, so what is the sort of the questions we can really answer, right? Traditional humanities questions with this new kind of access, large-scale access to data, right? So you already showed some wonderful examples of, for example, of topic modeling and that sort of stuff. But is there something like maybe just related to your own interest? Is there something we can understand more about somebody like Charles Swinburne from looking at his text from a digital large-scale perspective that we wouldn't be able to see if we only close read his poems?
Right. Thank you. The real goal of that project with his library, which we haven't accomplished yet, is to, we have the full text of the library and the things he's cited and so on, and we have the full text of his poetry. And our goal is to do some sort of parallel text analysis that will identify similar passages, from his connect passages from his poetry with things from his reading and library. And there's the obvious things where he's citing other writers and that, and he's acknowledged those, but we'd like to be able to find unacknowledged quotations or paraphrases or just accidental echoes of, his life in books and reading and so on. So that's the goal. And I don't think that would be, if you don't have the comprehensive knowledge of his reading and the memory to know it all and his poetry, I don't think that's something one could do, without these computational techniques. And we haven't done it yet with the computational techniques, but that's what we're working towards.
Yeah, great, thank you. So, are there any other questions? Yeah, I see a raised hand. Yeah.
I have a question that's more of a technical question. I was looking at the Research Center's webpage that you linked to in one of the slides, and it talked a lot about the work sets, and it asked for an alias when I formed the account that would be attached to work sets. So I just wondered about the technical side of if we wanted to go in and use the research tools, how does the public side of things work? Is our alias attached to things? Is it a sort of open digital space where everyone has access to what everyone else is doing if they go looking? Is there some privacy? I have not used any of these tools, so this is a very, very practical question that perhaps others are more aware of because of the way digital tools work, or digital humanities tools.
Yeah, if I can share my screen again, I'll be happy to kind of demonstrate that. Whoops. Do you see my browser window now? It's empty, but
yes, I can see it.
So I'm going to log into my account at, and you log in with through your institution if you're a HathiTrust member, and if you're not, you can get a login separately. Oh, now I have to do this business. They're very security conscious here at Indiana University. You wouldn't necessarily have to go through all that just to get into HathiTrust. Since I'm going in through IU, I have to go through their authentication system. So I've just loaded, I've logged in, there's a work set tab up here, and I see different work sets I've created, and they can be public or private. So most are public. The one I just did yesterday to do the Thomas Hardy stuff is private, not intentionally. I just didn't set it to public. And here I see the volumes that are available in that. If you make it public, then other people can use your work set. I created this alias Biblicon, so that's what people would see if they, as the creator of that work set, if it's a public one. And then this is the page to run those algorithms. So the word frequency is token count and tag cloud creator, and I give it a name. I select a work set, and it defaults to all the work sets. So these are all public work sets, and there's way too many of them. Or I can just look at my work sets. And here's Frank Herbert's Dune novels, and select the language. I can use the default stop word list, use the default for this other thing, which I won't explain right now. And then I submit it, and now it's running, and I have to wait for the results. And eventually it'll show up in my finished list down below. And here's the one I ran earlier, and there's the word cloud I showed, and the list of the most frequent words. So does that answer some of your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and I'd planned to walk through that little demo there, but wasn't sure I had time, so thanks for that question. And to create a collection, you can do that on the HathiTrust.org digital library site, and you just find volumes, add them to a collection, and you can add to a new collection and give it a name like Thomas Hardy's novels and short stories. Pick all your volumes and add them. And then from our work set page, you can create a work set from a public collection. So I think you have to make your collection public, but then you can create a private work set of it. And a work set is basically synonym for collection. So a HathiTrust collection can be a HathiTrust Research Center work set, which is the collection data that you work on with these tools.
Thanks. So being conscious of the fact that some people might have to go, before we collect some questions, I was just going to mention that our next event of the Digital Event Committee is already in 2 weeks. So on the 1st of March. And then we have as our guest Claire Horrocks, who will be talking, about the women of Punch. So please also sign up for that if you're interested in that, of course. I will be there, definitely. So I see that Ali has his hand raised, and if there are other people who still have questions, we can do sort of a roundup of questions. But maybe I will first. Ali, go ahead. Yeah.
Hi, thank you, John. This was really interesting, and I'm really happy to see that we can finally, without having to install lots of software on our computer, we can do topic modeling and most importantly, named entity recognition, which I was interested in the beginning of my PhD. I spent lots of time on that, and but it was difficult to install lots of programs, and I was in the beginning of understanding how digital humanities worked, and I just reminded me of Bob Nicholson's article on Victorian newspapers and counting culture, or how to read Victorian newspapers from a distance. And I thought that it might, I thought that maybe we can use the same method even in a with the analytics tools which are provided by HathiTrust, it will be much easier probably to apply that to the periodicals which are available on HathiTrust. This is the I just shared the article, Bob Nicholson's article, and I was wondering if it would be possible to, for example, analyze the different volumes of the same periodical in the HathiTrust catalog by looking at their, for example, the word frequency or certain named entities, their frequency of appearance, and etc. Would it be possible in the same way as different books, or does HathiTrust library treat the volumes of the same periodical differently than separate volumes of books? I'm not sure if I'm clear with my question. I'm sorry, but I hope.
No, that's great. I think I understand. And the kind of system and infrastructure of the digital library is very volume based. So everything's a volume. So they, ideally they've collected, the 3 volumes of a 3-volume novel together, but even that's not always the case. And some of the user interface problems we were talking about earlier. But if those, they do have a lot of bound volumes of newspapers and periodicals. So if those are in the library, you can do everything I've been showing today with those periodical volumes. I think the challenge would be more the user interface issue of finding, if you want to do a comprehensive run of one or more particular newspapers or magazines or whatever, would be finding all those, with the metadata issues we addressed earlier, and building your collection. Once your collection is built, you can create the work set and apply all the tools that I've shown today.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. So maybe I will take a final digital look around the room for questions, but I don't think I see any. So please feel free to notify me if there's any questions left. No, I thought it was a question, but it was a thank you in the chat. So I think that leaves me to thank John. Thanks, John, a lot. It was very interesting. So we are going to do a digital applause. Thank you very much. It's great to hear more about these new possibilities. And I also really hope that people in RSVP, but also other organizations, of course, are going to experiment with the tools you presented today. And I think it's also wonderful for example, for our students to learn more about them, and through them, of course, about the 19th century. So thank you very much. Maybe I will just, as a final word, I will get the final word to Priti. Do you have any announcements to make?
No, other than in 2 weeks, Claire Horrocks and Women of Punch. And let's thank John again. And I hope everybody's going to start using HathiTrust analytics for on some of those newspapers or periodicals that are on HathiTrust. So thank you, John.
Thank you so much. It's really been a pleasure to join you today. So thank you so much for the invitation.
Thanks, everybody.